Since that meeting in Leipzig, Bayern Munich plays its very first soccer game, marking the beginning of a storied history. The team was founded on February 27th by 11 men after being refused entry into the German Football Association. Bayern Munich immediately proved dominant as they won the first match 7-1. Admiral George Dewey, a war hero from the Spanish-American War, announces his candidacy for the presidency of the United States. The announcement is met by widespread attention and interest from the American public, who viewed Dewey as a national hero. In an interview shortly after, he said, "I am convinced that the office of the president is not a very difficult one to fill. His duties are mainly to execute the laws of Congress." Dewey will withdraw his candidacy next month after revealing that he'd never actually voted in an election. An attempted assassination is made on the Prince of Wales, future King Edward, while he was traveling through Belgium on his way to Denmark. As the prince's carriage passed through the streets, a 15-year-old boy named Jean-Baptiste Thibodeau fired a revolver at him. The assailant was quickly apprehended and taken into custody. Despite the severity of the crime, and it was obvious that he was guilty, Thibodeau was acquitted by the Belgian court because he was a minor. Thibodeau was an opponent to the Boer War. Many Belgians were sympathetic to the Boer cause, and Thibodeau saw the Prince of Wales as a symbol for British imperialism. Despite the failure of his attempt on the prince's life, Thibodeau's actions and subsequent trial drew attention to the strong feelings of the opposition to the Boer War that were present throughout Europe at the time. A final resolution is given to the people of Kentucky as J.C.W. Beckham is assigned as governor after the death of Goebel. Taylor fought the decision to the highest court in Kentucky, the Kentucky Court of Appeals, and then to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court chose not to hear the case. The United States has purchased its first submarine, the USS Holland. Its capabilities and technologies are impressive for the time. It can cruise at over 6 miles an hour both on the surface and submerged. It has 2 motors, a gasoline engine for charging its batteries, as well as an electric motor for propulsion. Although she has armaments, mainly torpedoes, the most valuable aspect of this ship was to produce data to aid in the construction of future submarines. "22 years ago, an amateur archaeologist, Minos Kalakarinos, discovered the site known as Knossos. Excavations have just started by Sir Arthur Evans, who will continue to excavate the site for the next 35 years. Knossos was a major city that saw inhabitants all the way back to the Neolithic period, with the first settlements discovered dating to 7000 BC and the first uncovered palaces dating to 1900 BC. This site will continue to provide excellent artifacts and reveal a wealth of information about the culture of the Minoan civilizations." The Paris World Expedition of 1900 is the 5th World Fair held in Paris. This exhibition showcases the world's largest technological and cultural advancements. It will be seen by over 50 million visitors from all parts of the world. The exhibition features a large collection of artifacts, arts, and scientific advancements that reflect the progress of human civilization. Here are my top 3 personal favorite exhibitions. The Great Paris Exposition Telescope, which enlarges the moon 10,000 times. The image is projected on a 144 square meter screen in a hall that seats 2,000 visitors. The optical tube assembly is 60 meters long, 1.5 meters in diameter, and light is sent into the tube by a movable 2-meter mirror. The National Pavilions. These were a way for participating countries to display their cultures and architecture in the form of a standalone building. Pavilions were finished inside, offering a slew of purposes during the event. Lastly, the aquarium, which is the largest aquarium in the world at the time. It can be viewed from an underground gallery 722 meters long. The water tanks are each 38 meters long, 18 meters wide, and 6.5 meters deep. They contain an amazing assortment of marine life, both normal and exotic. The last important thing to mention is the exhibition is also the introduction of the Michelin Guide. You may have heard of these. They're a rating system for exceptionally good restaurants. You may be saying to yourself, Michelin, the company that makes the Pilot Sport Cup 2R? Yes, that Michelin. This year, there are fewer than 3,000 cars in France. To increase the demand for cars, and more importantly, car tires, brothers Edouard and André Michelin published a guide for French motorists, the Michelin Guide. Nearly 35,000 copies of the first guide were distributed at the World's Fair. Off the coast of the Simi Islands, Elias Stradiatos stumbles across a shipwreck that will eventually have the Antikythera mechanism discovered on it. This is a mechanism used to calculate the astronomical positions and is accepted as the first analog computer. Its 37 meshing bronze gears could follow the movement of the Sun and the Moon in its regular orbit, which is because its perigee is faster than its apogee, and possibly the movement of the 5 classical planets. George Curry, a member of Butch Cassidy's Wild Bunch gang, is shot and killed by Sheriff Jesse Tyler while in Grand County, Utah. Although a notorious criminal, his death is up for some debate regarding excessive use of force by police. It's reported in a few places that George Curry was shot in the back first, and after he'd been incapacitated, Jesse Tyler shot his body several more times. Some argue that the killing of Curry was part of a larger pattern of law enforcement using excessive force against members of the Wild Bunch and other outlaw groups, often without due process. Today, the Daily Express published its first issue. This tabloid will revolutionize the tabloid industry with its use of showing news instead of advertisements on the front page. It will become the single largest circulation newspaper in the world. Just after midnight, locomotive engineer Casey Jones departed from Memphis to Mississippi over 75 minutes late. Casey was always known to be on time and was motivated today to arrive in Mississippi on the 10-wheeler steam engine known as Cannonball on the advertised. He charged into the foggy night with a train full of passengers for hours. During one of their water stops, Casey is quoted in saying to his fireman, Sim Webb, "Sim, the old girl's got her dancing slippers on tonight," as they made up almost all the time. Earlier on the 29th, there had been some issues at the Vaughan, Mississippi station. 2 cars needed to perform a saw-by maneuver, putting one train onto 2 separate tracks. The saw-by, however, left the rear cars of the number 83 overlapping to the north switch on the main line, directly in Jones's path. As workers prepared a second saw-by to let Jones pass, an air hose broke on the number 72, locking the brakes and leaving the last 4 cars in the number 83 on the main line. Jones didn't know this on the time and was coming hot into the station. The station came up over a ridge around a corner. Jones had no idea that the train was stopped on the tracks. Webb said that we saw no flagmen or fuses, we heard no torpedoes. Without any warning, we plowed into that caboose. Casey did everything in his power to alert his occupants and apply all the brakes he could. He was able to slow the train down just enough so that there was only one fatality in the accident, himself. It's 10:28 a.m. and a small community near Scottsfield, Utah hears a massive explosion echo from the surrounding mountains. They quickly realized that this was probably an explosion at the nearest coal mine. They were correct. While digging for coal, an excessive amount of dust had built up in the Pleasant Valley Coal Mine number 1 and number 4 mines. Coal dust is extremely explosive, and something in a mine caused the ignition. The explosion ended up taking the lives of over 200 men, although the miners estimate 246. Not only is this an immense loss of life, but for a small town, losing this many people in the able-bodied working men demographic left many widows and orphans. The town had to bring in men from neighboring communities to be able to dig all the graves. There were a few standout survivors, like James Naylor, who was thrown 200 feet by the blast, was uninjured, and then helped with the rescue and recovery. You also have John Wilson, who was thrown over 800 feet, had his skull crushed, penetrating trauma to his abdomen, and was able to recover from his injuries. Many were not so lucky, though. Some families lost all of their sons and fathers, and in the end, the Pleasant Valley Coal Company awarded each woman $467. But more donations came in from all over the country, totaling over $200,000. San Francisco Mayor James D. Phelan addressed an anti-Asian rally at Union Square and declared, "The Chinese and Japanese are not bona fide citizens. They are not the stuff of which American citizens are made of." This anti-Asian attitude has been building, and having a mayor support this mindset will not be productive in preventing racism and violence between Asian Americans and white Americans. At the University of Cambridge, a zoologist named William Bateson is riding a train to London while reading the recently rediscovered Gregor Mendel papers. Mendel's work has been largely discredited and forgotten about since its publishing in 1866. Over the last 34 years, his most important paper has only been cited 3 times in other academic works. William Bateson will become the greatest champion of Mendel's discoveries of the laws of hereditary. He will translate Mendel's papers and publish it in the 1902 book, Mendel's Principles of Hereditary Defense. Japan's Crown Prince Yoshihito and Princess Sadako are married in Tokyo and included a religious ceremony. Because of this, many commoners also began including religious ceremonies. The Shinto wedding will become the dominant wedding style for the next 100 years in Japan. In Chicago today, yes, this is a real title, please don't laugh, Chief Milk Inspector will announce his plans to ban potentially dangerous additives from milk. One of the ingredients currently in milk is formalin, which is a diluted form of formaldehyde. Formalin, the chemical used in milk preservatives, will kill a cat. What will it do to a child? Formalin's dangers were not understood when they started using it, but it's been discovered now as too dangerous for human consumption. At the village of Kaolo, near Beijing, 61 Chinese Christian converts are massacred. This marks the worst attack of the time in the Boxer Rebellion. An American minister telegraphed the U.S. government, situation becoming worse, request warships TACU as soon as possible. The 5 largest foreign powers with interests in China, which are the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, and Japan, call a meeting to determine a course of action for dealing with the Boxers. They provide Empress Dowager Cixi with a 5-day ultimatum. If the Boxers are not arrested and punished by that time, the armies would be sent to invade. Today, there will be a total eclipse of the sun, with the path traveling through Mexico and the southeastern United States. Due to the introduction of the Brownie camera, today will be the most photographed event in human history. Amateur photographers throughout the city are making extensive preparations for the event. Boxer rebels have cut the railroad line between Beijing and Tianjin. The superintendent of police in British East Africa, now Kenya, was traveling with 2 other hunters by railcar. A lion jumped into the window of the railcar in Kima while he was sleeping, dragged him off, and ate him. Although it will be about 80 years before we talk about the straight-edge movement and hardcore punk rock, we know that Carrie Nation would be a fan. Carrie is going to go on a personal crusade as a member of the temperance movement, opposing the sale and consumption of alcohol. Today marks the day of her first attack on an establishment serving alcohol. She walked into a saloon in Kiowa, Kansas at 8:30 a.m. today and told the owner, "I don't want to strike you, but I'm going to break up this den of vice." She continued to destroy the liquor in this and 3 other bars in town before escaping on horseback. She wasn't charged with the crime because the saloons were not operating legally. Back in Beijing, Chinese troops are surrounding the headquarters of Western powers. British Minister Sir MacDonald telegraphed, "Situation extremely grave. Unless arrangements are made for immediate advance to Peking, it will be too late." The 24-year-old Brissa Mundez died today under some mysterious circumstances. Brissa was imprisoned in Ranchi and reportedly died of cholera. Brissa did not have any symptoms of cholera, though, and many instead claimed that he was murdered. He will become a martyr for the Indian independence movement and opposition of colonialism. Swift action is made by the Western powers in China. An initial multinational force, the United States, France, Germany, Italy, Russia, and Japan, is sent from Tianjin to Beijing, at the time Tianjin and Peking, by train. These countries are doing everything in their power to secure the safety of their foreign citizens. Unfortunately, as the troops are traveling through Langfang, they come across a destroyed railway. The troops then pack up and march the remaining 50 miles to Beijing. The next day, for the originally planned arrival of these troops, Japanese diplomat Sugiyama Akira is planning to go greet them at the train station. Akira is dressed up in top hat and tails and was carried by carriage. This carriage is intercepted by General Tung and his imperial soldiers. They brutally kill and dismember Akira's body and put his severed head on display in the train station. Telegraph lines are severed in China, stopping all foreign communication. The final ultimatum issued last night is ignored by China, and the alliance begins its bombardment and invasion of the TACU forces. By tomorrow, the forts will be surrendered. China, specifically Empress Dowager Cixi, has formally declared war on the alliance. The Republican National Convention is held. William McKinley and New York Governor Theodore Roosevelt are unanimously nominated for president and vice president. The Duheng manuscripts are rediscovered. Wang Yuanle, a Taoist monk, discovers a walled-off cave, known now as Cave 17. This cave has been sealed since the 11th century, with its artifacts dating all the way back to the 5th century. Thousands of manuscripts covering hundreds of topics were discovered, with writings in all these languages, none of which I'm going to try and pronounce. These manuscripts are very culturally important to China. Many of these scripts are in museums and educational facilities in China, while some are unsurprisingly in the questionable hands of the British. It's the evening of the 24th, and the Boxer rebels are traveling by torchlight from house to house, attacking Christians. These Christians are being captured, tortured, and forced to renounce Christ. Many of them are being dismembered, decapitated, and burnt to discard their beliefs. Eyewitnesses state that there were many steadfast in their Christianity, and even after enduring gruesome torture, died with prayers on their lips. Russia, trying to influence its neighbors, will be seeing this theme for the next 123 years. Today, though, Finland is on the menu. The Russification of Finland is pushed further by Tsar Nicholas replacing the official language of Finland with Russia. This will be implemented slowly over the next 5 years. Today, we have our first, but not last, news regarding Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Today, he will renounce his children's right to succession of the Austro-Hungarian throne. This is due to him marrying Countess Sophie Chotkova, who is not high enough on the royalty totem pole to be considered as an appropriate match. The couple will be married this weekend. As you may know, we'll be hearing more about Franz in the future.